What the hell happened in Seattle? And more importantly, what comes next for the 49ers? What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Vish Kumar, and we're part of the Pro Football Insiders. This is the show where we go drive by drive through the 49ers game, break down everything that happened, good, bad, and ugly. Going to do it a little differently today because no one wants to totally relive that drubbing they had in Seattle. We'll go through the first half quickly, and then we'll react because there's a lot of news coming out about the Niners today. They spoke at their lockers and exit interviews. Jauan Jennings, Mac Jones, George Kittle talked a lot about his injury. There's good news there. Plus, Matt Barrow said something on KMBR that is already infuriating me about this 49ers offseason. So, Vish, how are you recovering after that beatdown?
Well, I think what happened to me once the 49ers lost was a lot of things, right? Like, one, when the Niners lose every year, it's like you know how it feels every year, but it still doesn't make it suck any less. That day, like, you're kind of reliving it. You're like, "Oh, is the season really over?" At some point you did convince yourself that they could get this one, even though you told yourself you're not doing that anymore and you're going to be a little detached. Football is not your life. You did convince yourself. And so now it's like all of those emotions of, hey, like, you're going through the stages of grief, all of that. But jokes aside, I think for me, the worst part about this playoffs, Rob, was I disliked just about every team that played yesterday. I don't like New England. I don't like Denver. I don't like the Rams. I don't like Seattle. I despise the Bears. And so I was left with the Niners, who, of course, got drubbed. Then I had to watch Houston, the other team I was rooting for, just lose in unceremonious fashion. At least I got to see the Bears lose, but that included the Rams winning, which, like, that's not always great. But it was a rough weekend, Rob. Here we are Monday, back to work, on to the next, on to Cincinnati.
First show of the offseason. Glad it's with you, sir. By the way, I've got a solution for Houston if they're looking for a new quarterback. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Let's just dive right into it. We're not going to go through the whole drive, through the whole game because it was a beatdown, but Seahawks returned the opening kick for a touchdown. And I don't know about you, Vish, but I had flashbacks because this was just like in the Harbaugh days when they would play against Seattle. Boom, Seahawks get an explosive play right off the bat. The crowd's into it. You're in a frenzy, and you just feel like you're in quicksand. And that's what it felt in this one right from the jump after that kick return.
Yeah. We can talk about the Niners special teams being good or bad. They were improved for the most part this year, but that kick return right off the bat, and like you can say the delayed start, all of these things affected them. Just the athleticism on special teams was like, whoa. Everything I thought about this game, every advantage I thought, like, maybe the Niners just can't overcome it because these rosters look a mile apart when you see Seattle run down on special teams, the speed, the physicality that they run down with. Then you see the Niners. You see the way Shaheed hits the hole as the returner versus the way a Sky Moore or Brian Robinson did. It's just a different speed, a different physicality. And I agree with you. I got flashbacks to that kind of game because to me, Seattle, and Rob, we touched on it before the show, right? Like, Seattle's been the bully against every team they've played. They've been more physical, faster than every team they've played. That's what the Niners have been for a lot of years, right? Like, that's what they did. Like, rarely, the thing I said about the Week 18 game was the Niners got out hit. Like, when do you say that under Kyle Shanahan? Like, yeah, the Niners are this beautifully schemed team, but they also out hit everybody. That's been their thing. That's been their MO. Seattle out hit them twice in 3 weeks, and they out hit them bad. And the other thing with Seattle is they were faster than them too. The thing the Rams have is they have speed, even though they get out hit. The Niners used to have speed and physicality, and they still kind of do, but with Seattle, it was another level. We're going to go through the drives and we're going to break it down, but I thought it was apparent from the special teams play, Rob. Like, on the special teams, the personnel that was on the field, it felt like 40 through 53. The guys that play special teams for Seattle are all much better athletes than the guys who play special teams for the 49ers.
Well, If you're not watching the stream, you can't see this tweet. Nick Wagner had it, and I think it's so telling. The speed, it's clear there's a deficiency there. The fastest 49er on the field this year was D. Winters, who on his pick six in Indianapolis, the only 49er to reach over 20 miles per hour. They need speed. Their average top speed this year was 12.81 miles per hour. That was sixth slowest in the NFL. They have to upgrade from an athletic perspective, and that's at all spots across the board. Running back, wide receiver, definitely everywhere. You need speed.
Tight end.
Yes, it's got to be everywhere. So that has to be job one going into the offseason. And you could tell watching these teams when the game went out, like the Seahawks were so fast and such good tacklers and flying around everywhere. That's job one for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch.
Definitely. And it's something they did all those years ago, right? Like you once had Dre Greenlaw flying around on this defense and Azeez Al-Shaair and all these people. They need to go find that again. And Seattle, because they've found that and put a roster like that together, has put pressure on the Niners that they need to do it maybe a year faster than they thought. Because this was supposed to be the reset year, even though I hate the idea that we're not going for it this year. You're going for it every year when you're invested in your quarterback this much, regardless of where your roster is. You might not be able to have optimal spending that year, but it doesn't mean you're not going for it. You're freaking going for it every year. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, they were supposed to then come into next year and kind of accumulate more assets and all of that. Well, Seattle now being this good puts pressure on that. But Rob, I honestly don't love where the Niners are from an asset standpoint for a resetting quote unquote team. Like, I think the youth of their roster is actually better than people give it credit for. I think they're a lot younger than people give it credit for. But I think in terms of assets to reset and where they're looking to spend and how they choose to spend, I don't love their position, especially for the needs they have. We can go down them after we talk a little bit through the drives of the game, maybe.
Who is texting you? Silence your damn phone.
Sorry, man. I'm popular.
God. First drive for the 49ers. I was worried. They're moving the ball, right? Jennings gets 4. Tonjes gets 7. McCaffrey runs for 7. I was like, oh my God, I'm excited. He actually got 7 yards on the first drive. That was longer than any run any 49ers linebacker had at all in week 18. I was like, okay, Kyle's figured out how to move the ball in this defense. And then they get to the 40-yard line. It's 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. They don't run a quarterback sneak either time, Bish. There was that controversy with the timeout. Did they get the timeout? Did they not? Kyle ultimately runs an option with Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey to the short side of the field. I have no idea what he was thinking. It got stopped, and the Seahawks were off and running.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was with Kyle. Maybe it was the fact that they delayed the start and turned the lights off and all of that, and that really ticked him off. But he felt rattled for me from minute one. He felt slightly pissed off. He felt like he was going to be a little more upset than I expected. And the opening kickoff, I'm sure, doesn't help for your mood when you prepare the whole week. And they were complaining about the short week and the rest, before the game. So it was clearly in their head a little bit that they were under rested to have to come play this game, which it's difficult circumstance. I'm not saying that's not a reason. But with Kyle being that way, Rob, I felt like the Niners on this first drive, like that Christian McCaffrey run was what they needed to try and establish on that first drive. That's what we talked about, because the side to side with how loud that crowd was, it's going to be so hard to coordinate, get your motions off, time them all correctly. It was way too loud to do that. And you saw the speed in which they ran down this option. They were ready to hit Juszczyk and McCaffrey for a loss. It was like, who wants to get smacked on this play? That's what it turned out to be. And the idea of going for we're going to unload everything we have and try to trick them is the right idea in a playoff game. But this is not the kind of defense you're going to trick, because I know people want to talk about Mike McDonald, defensive genius. They play very simple on defense. Every great defense is based on simple fundamentals of great match zone coverage and an outstanding pass rush. And when you play that simple, everybody knows their assignments and you play really, really fast. So they're not going to be bothered, especially when it's so loud 2 minutes into the game because of an opening kickoff touchdown, about 3 different motions and the fullback coming across and a fullback running for options. They're going to see their keys and trigger. That's why we talked about, well, somebody's got to try and move them in the run game. What we learned, though, Rob, is my plan was stupid, too, because they had no chance at moving these people in the run game. They struggled blocking Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy. They got their ass kicked by these guys the whole game. The interior of the 49ers offensive line lost this game from snap one. They lost the line of scrimmage. That's really where the game was lost. But I thought this was really bad signs and bad omens. When you go from a kickoff return for a touchdown to your first drive being a 3rd and 1 with an option where you can't even think of 4th and 1, even though you're in your own territory because the guy lost a half a yard on 3rd and 1. It felt threatening, Rob. Now, I didn't expect them to get shellacked the way they did. I thought they'd put up more of a fight, but I was nervous now at this point.
Well, I was definitely nervous at that point too. I didn't think Kyle was rattled. In fact, I like the way they came out, and they moved the ball right down the field. I don't know why in the world they didn't go for the sneak. He was asked about it, and he was like, "Well, they took the sneak away." It's like, dude, it's a yard. Don't give me they took the sneak away. You just move people. You shove the person in front of you 3 feet forward, and that's how you get a yard. Like the idea that, they couldn't possibly have gained a yard on the sneak because of how the Seahawks lined up, I think that's ridiculous.
I agree with you, and I'm sorry, I completely mixed that up. The use check option play was the 4th down play that they went for it, but the 3rd and 1 play, I'm sorry, they didn't even cross the line of scrimmage. He didn't turn that into 4th and half a yard. And I agree with you on quarterback sneak, especially with how good they are at running it, how low Brock Purdy gets. Like, why not go for it? These runs on 3rd and 1, they've never been that successful. I feel like when they get into a big spot, I don't know the stats of what they were this year. That's why I hesitated before I put my foot in my mouth, because next thing you know, it'll be Christian McCaffrey was 28 of 29 on 3rd and 1 runs this year, with the one being versus Seattle. But in big games, right, we can remember versus the Rams in the NFC Championship game, this particular spot, 3rd and 1, it's a spot that they have not done well with handing the ball off to the running back. And I thought it was indicative for their first drive of like, yeah. And then I don't get going to the I'm fullback option. I'm sorry.
No, coach's buddy should never touch the ball on a running play ever for any reason.
Can we say something too? Like, especially, I mean, his whole career, but especially with the roster that's on the field currently, 4th and 1 shouldn't be a play where Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey are trying to make a play. It should start with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. And that's like something that needs to be more natural also in this conversation, I think, as we go down the game. We learned in this game, like, the stats are never going to reflect it. He had a brutally difficult game, difficult circumstances. Brock Purdy plays his ass off. And he can make a lot out of nothing with just his legs and his competitiveness and all of these sorts of things. And so I think from a play calling standpoint, too, when you have your personnel is Jennings and Bourne and Pearsall and half a leg and, Tonjes and these sorts of people, like, you've got to keep the ball in Brock Purdy's hands in these sorts of bigger downs in the game. And yeah, 4th and 1 at the beginning of the game, at this point, it was a huge down, Rob.
Yes. And the idea that I never want Brock Purdy watching on a 4th down play. Like, no, he should always put the ball in the hands of your quarterback. That's why you paid him. Let him do it. Benali says the most annoying part of the game was some of the coolest passes of Purdy's career were wasted on this dumb game. I agree. I thought Brock Purdy was amazing on Sunday. If he didn't do something really cool, they didn't move the ball at all. Like, I feel better about Brock Purdy, honestly. I thought he played really well in the game.
Me too. And I thought he never, like, we say this a lot about him, but, like, you don't really, you say it, he didn't lose his poise after throwing a pick, but their offense scored 35 points in the game, you know? I think it's different to watch him not lose his poise and play the same way when they're down 34-6 and they're getting shellacked. And in the third quarter, he's playing the same way he played in the first quarter. The results, he wasn't getting the results out of his play because they were just getting owned on every aspect of the game, but he was playing the same way, and that's really cool. And I want to go also to the Kyle point because I think it segues right into the next drive. The reaction with Renardo Green, I don't fully still understand what happened, Rob. the way he reacted and he chewed him out on the sideline or whatever he did on the sideline, whether Green benched himself so he chewed him out or he chewed him out in benching Green, I don't fully understand. That's where I was like, oh, there's something a little edgy to Kyle. He's already a little upset. He wants to go yell at his cornerback, something that he doesn't usually do. It's out of character for Kyle to go, undress a player. He's not Sean Payton. He usually lets it go on the sideline.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. And I don't know if it happened on this drive, so because the Seahawks took over, and one other thing that happened on this drive is they're moving the ball down the field. The Niners have them in 1st and 15 after a false start, and it happened a couple of times in the game. But the Niners would get the Seahawks behind the sticks, and then immediately Seattle would come back and get on the right side of the sticks again. They had them in 1st and 15. This one, they hand the ball off 5 yards. All of a sudden, bam, it's back to 2nd and 10, which is totally manageable. They never made the Seahawks pay when they would screw up. And ultimately, Seattle went down and got a field goal, which at that point, I thought, all right, you turned the ball over on downs, but you only gave up a field goal. It's 10 points. It's not insurmountable. If you can get a score of any kind on your next drive, you're okay. I really was thinking that at this point. Unfortunately, the next drive was 2 plays because Jake Ton just couldn't hold on to the damn football, and then you were cooked. After that point, the game was completely lost because you gave up a touchdown on the following drive.
Yeah, and to that point in the theme of the game, like, I think Seattle maybe went down the field a little easier than we expected, and maybe we expected a little too much from the Philly second half when every Philly second half versus every defense has kind of looked like that. But we're fans. That's what we tend to do. That's how we tend to believe. I thought them stopping them on this 3rd and 2, getting Charbonnet down for a loss and all of that was indicative of like, okay, maybe they can't stop them down the field. Like maybe it's not like the Philly game where they can produce a 3 and out. But if they can hold up in the red zone, like you've got to think Shanahan has a plan. And then the next drive, right? Like the Tonjes play, what sucks about it too was it felt like that was their biggest play on offense, and then he fumbled. It was like, oh, they got a nice gain to Tonjes. Like, oh, maybe their offense isn't in a rhythm. Maybe they do have a plan. Maybe it wasn't just like that drive felt so hard and he got stopped on 4th and 1 and Tonjes fumbled. And then what happened next, I think, is where the game essentially gets lost, Rob.
Well, yeah, because this was infuriating, right? So you fumble. Oh, Seattle. Here comes Seattle. They're at the Niners' 42-yard line. Oh, no, we're in trouble. And Saleh dials up a Malik Mustafa blitz, and he flies down and chases Darnold down and sacks him for a 10-yard loss. And you're like, we might be able to hold them off. Like Saleh might bail us out here. But what happens? 2nd and 20, back in Seattle territory. Immediately, Sam Darnold goes to Cooper Kupp. 1st down. They couldn't even get to 3rd down on 2nd and 20. They get 21 yards. That was what I wanted to rip my hair out when that happened.
Yeah, that was brutal. And it felt so easy. It felt so automatic.
They never make Sam Darnold have to beat them. It's always easy for him. It's always low pressure. It's always running up and down the field. So all he has is easy play action, very defined throws. It was just the worst possible way this game could have unfolded. The Seahawks scored 13 points in the first 2 matchups against the 49ers. They had 17 points in the first quarter of this one.
Yeah, I think you are right. It's the worst possible way the game could have turned out. But I think when you look at these two rosters, us believing that the Niners were going to do anything different than Sunday was just more like what the Niners have been doing this whole year. And what they had been doing this whole year was avoiding games like what happened on Saturday, right? Like no matter who went down, they would somehow find a way. And that was like, oh, maybe this thing of what happened on Saturday is never going to happen, where they play this roster that's actually like way better than them and they get beaten up for it. Because we've seen it in glimpses in games that they've won, right? Like Jacoby Brissett was putting on an offensive clinic. Again, they made Michael Wilson look like Jerry Rice against the 49ers defense. And it was okay because the Niners won by 3 scores, right? We saw other games where like it was so easy for the other team in the game, but the Niners won by 2 scores, so we wouldn't talk about it. And then it comes to this game where Seattle is like better across the board. Like the 53 Seattle put on the field, it's reminiscent of the 2019 49ers. The way the defensive line is 8 deep, they're not as top heavy as the Niners were, but they're maybe deeper when you go down to the 8. How good their defense is, the way they play together, the way they hit, the way they run. The offense is so well coached. Sam Darnold gives me a Jimmy Garoppolo vibe with how he's playing. Like it's very like that. And Seattle just put it on them, and it felt like for the first time all year, there was nothing the Niners could do about it, Rob. And it wasn't like, oh, they did this wrong, they did this wrong. Because in the back of our mind, like we did expect this at some point to happen to them. We just kept coming back and saying, oh, it wasn't happening. Oh, they are pulling it off. Oh, Tonjes is doing this. But what Tonjes did on Saturday, what Farrell did on Saturday, it's kind of who they are. Like at a certain point, you couldn't have expected the magic, to keep going. And it sucks that it ended. I certainly didn't believe it was going to end. I was believing all the way they were going to play a good game. But when you take a step back 2 days later and you look at the matchup and you look at how it played out and you look at the way they got beat down and you look at the way Seattle has looked the last month of the year, like it was really reflective of, this is kind of where these two rosters are at in January. And it doesn't mean the Niners are there the next time they play when the Niners, hopefully, if they get healthy. It's just on Saturday, the 53 Seattle put out there, they had like 30 players better than what the Niners had,
Yeah, and if you can't admit that as a 49er fan, then you're just not living in objective reality. There's no question about it. This was the drive where Bernardo Green ultimately gets benched, and the Seahawks go down, and they get the touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jigba, which was the only thing Jackson Smith and Jigba did all day, mostly because he didn't need to do anything because they were running the ball down the Niners' throats. But okay, I want to do one more drive for the 49ers, and that is because I think if they had scored a touchdown on this drive again, I still thought that maybe they had a shot, and it was the field goal drive where Ricky Pearsall has a chance on third down, and he's got his hands under the football, and it's going to be a catch, but his momentum takes him over the top, and as he goes over the top, he bumps the football, and they rule it incomplete, which was the correct call, but that I thought was a devastating play. I thought Kyle should have gone for it. Instead, he decided to kick the field goal to make it 17-6 because the Niners they got a field goal in the second quarter. They forced a 3-and-out, and they got the ball back, and they decided to kick the field goal to make it 17-6. And I really thought if they got a touchdown there, they could have gotten maybe back into it.
I don't know about that. I mean, they got really beat down. But even at that point in the game, like I understand the thinking of let's not go out of character and go for it on a 4th and 6 after a tough drive. Like we want to make it seem like just because we're down 17, we have the same mindset. But if there was ever a game to go out of character because of what you saw for the first 17 minutes of the game and feel a little bit desperate, it was this one. Like you had to feel like watching Seattle go up and down the field with just the way their roster looked compared to yours. You couldn't feel like, man, we were going to get so many more chances in their territory to try and convert into points that we could take a field goal here, kick it off to them, and then expect to get the ball back and then reset and do this drive again. Like there are certain games where your conventional logic has to be thrown away because, hey, you're that overmatched. This was one of those games. Like, yeah, conventionally, I don't even mind him kicking this field goal 17-6 in a normal situation where I know you hate it every time. I don't mind it. I don't mind field goals at certain points. But this situation, when you're down 17 to it was 3, I think at this point, the field goal makes it 6. When you're down against this team like that, and you saw what the first 3 drives were, you see what the special teams matchup looks like, you see what the offense matchup looks like, you see what the defense matchup looks like. You got to go for it in that spot. And that was like one where it was like, I didn't get the confidence that he got from it.
I just first of all, don't go out of, who cares about that? Just read the room. How many drives are you going to get in Seattle territory? Not many. And also I want you to go for the touchdown because again, Vish, if you score there, instead of it being 17-6, it's 17-10. It's a 1-score game. You do put pressure on the Seahawks offense. You do put a little pressure on Sam Darnold. Now, maybe it changes nothing, but making a two-score game does nothing. And
Well,
it's stupid, and I hate it forever.
but Rob, the reason I have trouble going to touchdown on that drive is they had to convert that 4th and 6, and 6 yards was tough to come by for them on offense the whole
Yes.
game. And then they had to go 38 more yards to score a touchdown. So it's tough to say, like, oh, they're going to score a touchdown. But I'm with you. 17-6 and 17-3 made no difference for them at that point. Seattle went right down the field and ended the game.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they would have scored. I'm saying you always miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? I think Michael Scott
Wayne
said
Gretzky.
I think Michael Scott said that. So
True.
I didn't like it, but it was 17-6. And yeah, you never stop them. Seattle goes right down the field, 10 plays, 80-yard touchdowns, and the game was essentially over. We don't need to dive into it any more than that. It got away from them in the second half because then they did have to keep going for it on 4th down. They weren't converting. Seahawks were getting a short field, and it snowballed, and we all know.
It just got ugly. Farrell quit on the Purdy pick, which sucks. I mean, I was just rooting for Purdy to have decent stats at a certain point, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm all set. We could punt him into the sun. Oscar Alfaro says he wants Saleh at head coach, Schwartz at defensive coordinator, Kubiak offensive coordinator, and Roseman as GM. That's wishful thinking there, Oscar. But
Saleh is like fascinating to me. Like, I don't get what people see. I'm not.
Here comes the Robert Saleh slander.
I think he's a great DC, okay? I think he's a good head coach. I think he's a good coach. I don't know if he's a good head coach, okay? I think he's a great DC too. But I think he's become like it's become a normalized like brand thing to say, like a smart thing to say is Robert Saleh is a good DC. So therefore, every time Saleh, yeah, Saleh is a great coach. Like, yeah, Saleh is doing this, Saleh is doing that. I felt like there were some things wrong with the 49ers defense this year that I wanted to point out. Like the secondary play this year, every player in that secondary objectively got worse with him as the defensive coordinator. I don't know why that's the case, but that's a question to me. Now, do I think he made chicken soup out of chicken you-know-what with the 49ers defense? Yeah, I think he's a great defensive coordinator. This idea that he's this, hallmark head coach candidate, that the Niners can't replace him. They replaced him once. Granted, it was DeMeco Ryans, but I think there's other people out there to replace him even today. I wouldn't mind them bringing in something new because the way they have their defense set up with Saleh, they have so much personnel that they need to go get. They need to go get a defensive line that can, enable them to have the kind of dominant defense. And Saleh's the great defensive coordinator that can make you have a dominant defense. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just a frustrated fan today because that's not usually the kind of thing I go to, but I went there.
Two things can be true. Robert Saleh is a great defensive coordinator. He is, period, end of discussion. It's also true that Robert Saleh isn't the only guy that can coordinate the 49ers defense. It's not like, well, they can't be good unless he's the defensive coordinator. Don't let that fool you.
Thank you. There we go. That's what I was looking for. You put that sensibly.
There are other candidates out there that I want them to interview. Jim Schwartz is out there. Raheem Morris is out there. There's somebody, Sean McDermott now, who was just fired today.
So that's one I'd be intrigued in.
It costs you nothing to do a full search. Do not just hand the job to Gus Bradley simply because that was your original plan before 10 NFL head coaches were fired before the season began. Unfortunately, Vish, if you listen to Matt Barrows on KMBR, they are going to just hand the job to Gus Bradley.
Gus Bradley is the next guy up. I think the 49ers sort of, saw what happened with Steve Wilkes and Nick Sorensen and realized they didn't have anybody, in waiting, no heir apparent, ready to kind of step in. And they took care of that this year. They knew that Robert Saleh isn't going to be here for a long time. So they brought in Gus Bradley, and Gus Bradley already has a, fairly prominent role. I mean, he would talk to the team every Saturday night before games. So they're used to Gus Bradley. He's a very kind of congenial guy. friendly guy. I see him at their lockers all the time after games. Robert Saleh learned this defense from Gus Bradley. It's not going to be a system change and not going to be a culture change. So I would think that that's what they do if Saleh were to get a head coaching job.
I hate that. I hate that so much, Vish. Oh, Gus Bradley, he's a nice guy. Who cares? Don't just stick with what's comfortable. Do what's uncomfortable. Talk to other defensive coaches. What do they think of your personnel? Why are you married to this system like it's the only possible defense you could ever run, right? Like, interview, go through the process. Smart, good organizations don't just stick with what's comfortable. They examine everything, and the 49ers should do the same thing if Saleh does get a head coaching job, which I think he will.
Yeah, I think they should explore everything. I wouldn't be surprised if Barrows is just saying that if there wasn't some like just handshake agreement deal with part of Gus Bradley not taking any other job last year and just coming and being the consultant for the Niners, is everybody having this idea when Saleh leaves, Bradley can just take over as the defensive coordinator. He's experienced. He's done the job. He's done a good job. He's had, top ranked defenses, coached them in his career. He was there in Tampa Bay with Monty Kiffin and Rod Marinelli and all of those, Mike Tomlin and Raheem Morris, when this defense, kind of originated from Tampa 2 to Seattle 3. So he's a good option from that standpoint. But I think there's something to finding, when you originally got Robert Saleh, when you originally got DeMeco Ryans, what makes the Niners coaching staff, other than, Bobby Turner, Chris Forrester, kind of special, is you get all of these young guys who are almost looking for the next job, and they coach with that like ambition and urgency of I'm looking for the next job, right? And I don't want to say it's like selfish, but in a way, Gus Bradley knows he's resigned to the fact that he's a defensive coordinator for the rest of his career. It doesn't take away from him being a good defensive coordinator, but I like the guy who's, looking to come up with the next advantage because he can make a name for himself and become a head coach the way Robert Saleh did it for himself, the way DeMeco Ryans did it for himself. And the guy in the Niners staff that I've been intrigued by is KJ Wright. I thought KJ Wright was a terrific football player when he played for Seattle's defense. I thought he was very underrated, especially playing next to Bobby Wagner. He did a lot of the dirty work in coverage. I've heard KJ Wright talk. He used to have a podcast. I think he speaks well. He's a good communicator. I don't think those two things mean he's a good football coach or good as a defensive coordinator. That's for the 49ers to find out. But he's in that DeMeco Ryans kind of development role. They never replaced Johnny Holland, right? He's the longtime veteran linebackers coach. So what's next for KJ Wright if he's not, going from quality control? And I wonder, I wouldn't mind if they have another young coach coming through the pipeline rather than going to a Gus Bradley, who will kind of put you in this nomad spot of, yeah, he'll be better than Steve Wilks or Nick Sorensen in the sense that you don't have to worry about him, but you'll be year after year wondering, do we need to replace Gus Bradley or do we not? Because he's going to be smack dab average in terms of what he brings to your defense in the league. He's not Robert Saleh, who will bring innovative thinking and coaching with just scheme and ability to get players to buy in to play a certain way that allows you to elevate, chicken, to chicken, which is what they did this year.
I completely agree. You need hunger. You want guys that have that hunger. I like that Gus Bradley's on the staff. I'm fine with that. Great. But also just go through the process. There's too much just handing people jobs. I don't like that. Now, Robert Saleh's got to get another job, which he probably will, because I think there's 10 head coaching jobs that are open literally.
But it's funny, right? Because he's supposed to be all choosy, and it looks like he's choosing between Tennessee and Arizona, and he's taking those interviews quite seriously. Mr. Choosy, picking the two worst owners available in the market. Do you think he's got a chance to be choosy, or do you think he's going to take whatever job he gets?
I sure would like that Buffalo job. How do you think John Harbaugh and Kevin Stefanski feel? They're like, wait, we didn't know the Bills job was going to open up the chance to coach Josh freaking Allen.
If you're honest, though, who wants to work with Brandon Beane? The guy just took a promotion after getting the coach he came with fired. If there's not a bigger snake in the business, it's him. And you know what? Him and his baseball buddy, The Athletic did a whole athletic article about the baseball guys, the cool guys, the basketball guys, Bean and Shane from Buffalo. Look at what they did. Two biggest snakes in the sport.
Not great, I'll tell you that. Monkey Boy 12 says, I hate this division. 3 great rosters, constantly great coaches. GMs are also pretty darn good at drafting with 1, if not 2 Super Bowl.
No, that's the second part. Seattle and the Rams GMs, the job they do in free agency, the value they get out of their signings. Like, I think a lot of people hear us.
Hold on. The Seahawks sucked for a long time with Pete Carroll and John Schneider. Like, let's not act like John Schneider has always been like, they were bad when he was there too.
Oh, sure.
We're counting the Seahawks a little early here.
Oh, no. I'm not saying Seattle is a better organization than the 49ers, because I think what evens out is they all do different things better than each other, and that's how they end up over the course of the year. And my point with Schneider is more so, one of the things that was reported during the Schneider-Pete Carroll power struggle, and the reason I go here with Schneider, was that Schneider didn't have enough control on the roster to build it the way he wanted. They were building it the way Pete Carroll wanted, so they moved him out and got a coach that Schneider would be able to then build the roster the way he wanted. And when you look at the moves that they've made since they were kind of kicking Pete Carroll out and the moves he's made for the future, I'm not just talking about draft picks resulting in a good result, because that you can't always control that, and you can't always control who's going to end up as what, but more so the way they've managed their assets, who they've given money to, what those players have produced for them. I think Seattle has done a really good job the last 2 years. The Rams, I think Les Snead specifically has done a great job throughout the entire tenure of the Rams. And I mean this, not that the Niners do a bad job, right? The Niners are very inconsistent. Sometimes they have great signings. Sometimes they have completely terrible ones. Sometimes they have good draft picks. Sometimes they have terrible ones, like any other team. But it's more so the consistency of what's the science behind what Seattle does. Seattle has a science for how they built this team and what they invested in and all of that. The same thing with the Rams. I get to the 49ers and I say, this is where I get a little bit frustrated, right? Like, Seattle has a bunch of 30-year-olds. Like, you want to talk about an old roster? 33-year-old Tank Lawrence, 32-year-old Leonard Williams, 29-year-old Julian Love. These are all veteran signings, trades, Ernest Jones, that they acquired, right, over the course of time. And, people are going to say the Niners have done that too. What I think is missing from the Niners is their first day of free agent signings. When you go down the list for Shanahan and Lynch, right? Like, last year was Luke Farrell. You've got like Quan Alexander in there. You've like the only guy that they've got is a veteran second contract free agent signing is Charvarius Ward. These are the places where I get a little frustrated, and I've done a terrible job making this point, Rob, so I'm going to stop talking because I myself am thinking through the mess I've made while talking through this. But I feel like the Niners' asset value management, I think it's specifically a Kyle Shanahan problem. I don't think it's a John Lynch problem, because I feel like John Lynch's job is to enable Kyle Shanahan the power to make these decisions, which come with the best coaching that you can ask for. Look at what he did this year, but also come with just bizarre, like, GM value things that no matter what you say, a GM wouldn't do that. A GM wouldn't, like, a John Schneider isn't trading 3 first-round picks a month before the draft to go look at 3 different quarterbacks and decide if they could draft one of them. That's a very coach-like thought, and the Niners do stuff like that. That's where I get a little frustrated. It doesn't mean tomorrow or next year the Niners can't build a better team than Seattle. It just means that one particular thing compared to Seattle and the Rams, which is we have $100 million over the course of the offseason. How are you going to use that $100 million, and what does it result in? The Niners are, we wasted $90 million, but Shanahan produced $100 million worth on the field out of the $10 million. And Seattle and the Rams are a little more, we used our $90 million and we got $100 million out of our $90 million on the field. And that frustrates me.
I think that Kyle kind of falls into the Belichick area, which is Kyle, the GM, is not as good as Kyle, the coach. And I think Kyle, the coach, kind of bails out Kyle, the GM, a little bit, because I think Kyle is so good as a coach that he's making chicken salad out of chicken-ish, like you've talked about. I think that I would love a real, not a John Lynch, a real GM. I could get on board with that because I think Kyle has gotten himself into a bit of trouble.
It's the worst talking point, and I'm the problem because I bring it up. Because if you think about it, the way they hired John Lynch in the first place was so that you don't have a GM arguing with Kyle and pissing him off about this crap, right? It's so that you have a GM that enables Kyle's mind so that he can have the control, the free will, and the thinking. And what Kyle has produced from that is, top 1%. Not many coaches in their first job turn around and inherit what he inherit, turn it completely around and manage everything the way he's managed it. That's an A1 job. But then when he's doing the A1 job and you look at the margins, right? Like, why didn't the 49ers win the Super Bowl this year? Like, a whole plethora of reasons. One of the things we always say is, like Kyle, the GM, it feels like fell too much in love with this player and they, wasted 2 picks to trade up and get him. Kyle, the GM, fell too much in love with Quan Alexander and they spent X amount of money to get him. And those are the sorts of things that you come back and say. And that's where it's like, okay, they have this amazing coach who wants to do things this way. So it's like, if he's going to be the coach, you have to put him in the sort of position the Niners are putting him, with John Lynch kind of being the intermediary between him and Jed York and taking care of the obligations that come with that level of corporate position, which is head coach of the organization. So Kyle can focus on the football, right? It's not like a GM in terms of just football operations and head coach in terms of coach. John Lynch kind of steps in and does the media gigs that Kyle doesn't want to do, stuff like that as well. And so they enable and balance each other that way. You're not going to get then a conventional GM like Les Snead, who has a scouting background and an analytics and front office background to think that sort of way. And I don't think Kyle wants that, because those sorts of guys are really good at talking to the owner, and the coach is into football 365 days a year, And then next thing you know, you're Brian Daboll and you're out of a job, and Joe Shane is hiring the next coach. Next thing you know, you're Sean McDermott and you're out of a job, and Brandon Beane is hiring the next coach. So I don't think Kyle would do that. And that's why, long story short, I think it's kind of the worst conversation point to bring up, because whether it's a weakness of his or not, you're not going to have this amazing head coach without this kind of operating setup. He's not going to go for it.
You wouldn't think so. And maybe Jed could convince him, but Jed doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to be talking to Kyle Shanahan in that way. He'll adapt to reading 8465.
You can't do it too.
Says, your Schwartz is as big as mine. Salah's definitely getting one of those head coaching jobs. So give us Jim Schwartz. Do it, Kyle. Again, I want to see him interview for sure. John V76, thanks for the super chat, says Seattle Sports Radio's Mike Salks is still attacking the injury fact, saying the Niners roster isn't built to handle an NFL schedule. I want to say a couple of things here, because I know Mike. I worked with Mike at ESPN. I produced him many times. I think it's okay. You don't have to, like, how do I want to say this? Like, for example, Eagles fans in 2022 tried to sell this fiction that the game would have played out exactly the same way if the 49ers didn't lose all their quarterbacks. They cling to that. Like, oh, that wasn't a factor at all, which is, of course, ridiculous. Not to say the Niners would have won that game, but you can't deny it would have been different. Just like if the Niners had all their guys, they don't lose 41-6 on Sunday. They don't, but they didn't. And Seattle doesn't have to apologize for that. They don't have to give it back. They kicked the 49ers' butts. But to say like, oh, well, injuries are the 49ers' fault because their roster isn't built to handle an NFL schedule. Like, dude, just acknowledge the 49ers were injured, and also the Seahawks kicked their ass. It's cool.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? Because at a certain point, even as a fan making the excuse that my team was injured, it feels like I'm making that excuse every year, right? Like every year it's like, yeah, but they were injured, and they were injured every year. But it's like, how many times can you keep saying it? At the same time, I also feel like what's lost in all of this is a lot of NFL seasons are like that season, that moment, right? Like that ride, like that momentum, that month, how you're playing. And it's a lot of very present tense in terms of what that is, how that play looks like. And sometimes for some people, what's said in that present tense just becomes what's their perception for 2 years. And then for some people, we actually evaluate who they are week after week, month after month, and we ride the wave of in one moment they're great and in one moment they're not good, because most players are riding this wave the whole year. They're never exactly in one spot as you're talking about them. And Seattle, to that point, Rob, is like this year, like that's where their roster is. That's where they are. But as long-term built as this looks, as good as everything looks, next year we could be saying Seattle's roster is not built to last the whole year. And that's the point of the NFL year. And that's why some of this stuff is so weird to say, like as a resounding statement. No, this year they didn't last.
Like the Niners were super healthy in 2023, not because they were so great or their roster was that much better. It's because, you know what? Circumstance is part of this too. And that year they happened to not be as injured. Now they, of course, ended up losing some key guys in the Super Bowl, but nonetheless, like that's my thing is like, I think sometimes teams say like, oh, well, we weren't injured. That makes us superior or because we're superior to you. Like, no, man, circumstance is part of this too. And that's all I'm saying. The Seahawks don't have to apologize for anything. And if they want to say they would have beat the Niners at full strength, they are free to say that. That's fine. But the idea that like somehow their players and their roster are superior and the 49ers aren't because the 49ers had more injuries, that I don't buy.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think the injury thing, as much as we would like to say it's within their control, as much as it frustrates us as fans, and maybe there is something in their control that we don't know about, it's just part of the sport. Like it is what it is, right? Like it just happens. And oftentimes the healthiest team is winning.
Right. If you go look, the healthy, like that's part of it. It's a stamina test. Cinnamon Kiss says the Niners need a talent consultant for the draft and free agency like Scott McCloughan. I know the McCloughan works with a whole bunch of different teams. I don't know. I would doubt that the 49ers are one. But I know that he does do a lot of scouting, and a lot of teams have different guys that do different scouting. Okay.
By the way, with the scouting.
Go ahead.
With the scouting point, really, really quick. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I won't be quick. with the scouting point, I don't think the issue is like, oh, their scouts don't identify like the right group of players, right? Because the scouts are doing the majority of the work, right? Like what happens, in my opinion, is the GM and the coach, they say, for running back, we look for these 3 non-negotiable intangible traits and these 3 non-negotiable physical traits. And over the course of a draft, over the course of the year, the scouts accumulate all the guys that could be a fit for what the coach and GM looks for. Then around draft time, coaches start digging into the draft film, but they don't have time to watch every single prospect in the world. So they watch the subsect of players that scouts believe that the Niners would be interested in, the guys that fit within the traits. Now, what happens with the Niners usually is around this time, the coaches essentially take over the draft. So Chris Forrester is going to watch the subsect of offensive linemen. He's going to give you the ranking, and between him and Shanahan, they're probably going to pick if they pick an offensive lineman. Bobby Turner is going to give you the ranking of running backs, and between him and Shanahan, they're going to pick on the running backs. That's kind of what ends up happening. They're very coach-driven. The scouts drive who they look at, but the coaches drive ultimately who they pick, which makes sense, right? They're coaching them. They're developing them. They need a feel for that sort of player. But within that, that's the earlier point about Shanahan. Like Scott McCloughan isn't going to stop Shanahan from trading 3 first-round picks, a month before the draft to go look at the quarterback, right? Scott McCloughan isn't going to stop Shanahan from trading 10 picks up the draft for Dante Pettis because he loves Dante Pettis and he needs to have Dante Pettis. Those are the things that are very Shanahan specific. That's not because he doesn't play the role of GM and he's not doing that job. Those are the things that, you can't stop. Those are the value things where he just gets emotional. He wants something and he wants it there and he needs to have it and he goes and gets it for himself. And you know what? Maybe he's such a good coach that he can continue living that way. Unfortunately, until he wins the Super Bowl, he's going to have to hear people like us suggest otherwise.
Look, if you're right, you can do anything you want, right? It's just the problem is you got to be right. And Shanahan has missed on a lot of these. I know you got to run and I think you're frozen, Vish. Are you okay? You're still with me.
No,
I want to get to one more thing with you though, before you go. I think it's a big picture thing. Looks like there's here, Vish, pop out and pop back in real quick. Cause I think there's a little issue with the connection
with me. Okay,
good. Yeah. Vish is going to do that. There's one more issue I want to get to with him, and it has to do with something that Jauan Jennings talked about at his locker today. So as soon as Vish pops back in, I want to get to that because I know he has another engagement he's got to run to, but I value his opinion on this. All right, Vish, let's see. Are you back with me?
I think so. I never thought I left.
Boy.
Well,
All right, well, let's see how this goes. Here was Jauan Jennings at his locker as the Niners were clearing things out.
We'll see.
Well, Jauan, if they put a franchise tag on you, would you be cool with that?
I had to talk to my guy Drew to see what that is all about.
So that's Jauan Jennings at his locker. Now, Jauan Jennings led 49ers with 9 receiving touchdowns this year. They got almost nothing out of their wide receivers this year as a unit, as a whole. And I think it speaks to, I don't want Jauan Jennings back this year. Not because he's a solid player. There's no question about it. But this team desperately needs playmakers. They need game breakers. They don't have, we mentioned the speed earlier in the show. They don't have guys that put the fear of God into people anymore. They used to, right? When Kittle was younger and they had Debo and they had Ayuk, they used to put the fear of God into people. They don't have those guys anymore. They need playmakers. And as good as Jauan Jennings was for them this year, he ain't it.
Yeah, I don't know what his price is going to be. And I do think Jauan Jennings is the kind of player where there is a certain price I wouldn't be willing to pay. Like there's a number where I'd be like, yeah, that's too much money. He can go get that in the open market. I wouldn't pay it. But I'm going to surprise you with this one, Rob. I say bring him back. I agree with everything you said in addition to that. Do they need all of those things? Yes. I say go get it in addition to having Jauan Jennings. What they also need with this team is I think they need his toughness. He has chemistry with Purdy. He has the ability to separate on third down. He's available. He's consistent. He does things in this offense where they trust him. And those things are so hard to come by for them with so many different players. I don't want to see them, replace him with a second round pick who we wait the whole year for them to quote unquote trust that they never trust. I agree with you. They need speed on their offense. I say go get speed. I agree with you. They need all of those things. Keep Jauan Jennings and go get it. Cut the check. That's what I say. But there is a price. With that, right? There's a price that I wouldn't pay him.
I do not get out of here. Like, oh, they don't trust him. Guess what? You know how you get trust? You get reps with other people. You bring in new people. Growth is hard in life, in anything. It's hard. It's scary and it's difficult. But if you don't change things and you don't grow, you don't evolve, you'll never grow as a person. You'll never grow as a team, as an offense. But Jauan Jennings is exactly the type of player you don't pay. He's exactly the type of guy.
How is he restricting your growth? Now, if you say Jauan Jennings is going to get $20 million on the open market and the Niners have to match that, well, I'm not saying that, right? Like I would say, okay, let him walk. That's not how I view him. But there's nothing he does in this offense that, prevents you from getting anyone else. They don't feature him that way. What he does do is block. He blocks really, really well. He's reliable in the red zone. He separates at the top of his route, which is something not every receiver does. And he runs after the catch. And he runs after the catch in short spaces where you can throw the ball to him 3rd and 4, and you can throw it to him short of the sticks, and he'll go get you a first down. Those are all things to me when you say, what do we need for our offense? That's valuable. None of those things prevent you from being able to have an explosive offense. None of those things. You don't have to feature him. You don't have to throw him the ball a lot. You don't have to do any of these things. Now, to that point, Rob, that's a skill set you don't pay $25 million for, right? That's not the skill set you pay for. But if you say he's $15 million on the open market, what do they have on this team? What do they have at receiver? That's where I'm at. This is a player I would have said walk 100 times out of 100. And here I am today saying, bring him back.
No, but you don't keep them because, what else? Everything else we have is bad. You don't.
Yeah, they do need to.
Is this person good for what it's going to cost? If he any more than what he's getting paid now, which he's going to want, of course he's going to want. I totally understand that. But any more than he's getting paid now, no way. Like, don't sign him out of fear because you're worried about the rest of the roster. I can't get behind that. You need to retool this wide receiving core. I think they have a piece they can build on with Pearsall. I really do. I understand the injury concerns, but I think he can be a good player. Plus, he's on a rookie deal anyway, so there's no reason to get rid of him whatsoever.
So you get Pearsall and what?
You got to go get guys. You got to go sign an Alec Pierce.
How many guys are you going to be able to get? That's what I'm saying.
You can get guys.
If you take Jennings out, they have one starter, and then they have nobody that I guess Robinson fills receiver position 4, and then nobody else fills anything 1 through 6.
That's why there's an offseason.
How many guys are they going to get in an offseason? They need to get the receiver 2 or receiver 3.
You have Demarcus Robinson, you have Ricky Pearsall, you have Jordan Watkins, you have Jacob Cowing. You can sign an Alec Pierce.
You name 2 biscuits and 1 number 4 receiver, and then Ricky Pearsall.
You can draft another wide receiver in the draft this year. The idea that they got to pay big money for Jauan Jennings, I'm totally out. Oh, he blocks. Great.
I never said pay big money for Jauan Jennings. I said there's this price he would be priced out of.
He's not going to sign for what he's making now. So it's irrelevant.
His value is on the open market.
The only way, did you see what he said when they were like, oh, how about the franchise tag? He was like, oh, I got to talk to my agent about that.
He doesn't even know what the franchise tag is, Rob. The franchise tag is probably more money right now than he's going to get annually anywhere else. He would probably be guaranteed to get more money from that franchise tag than he's going to get annually anywhere else. Isn't it the average of like the top whatever percent of salaries? That franchise tag's got to be north of $30 million.
It's going to be more than he gets for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be maybe double what he gets.
I am not paying I
thought that was a stupid question because he's not worth. You don't think about franchise tagging Jauan Jennings?
They will. I mean, especially because of what happened with Ayuk, they're never going to pay. Like they're not going to give anybody big money.
They're not the same. They're not the same, right? But to me, the point with Jauan Jennings, Rob, is where the Niners roster is missing a little bit, right? Like they have the stars, which is the top of the league, the highest paid guys in the league, and then they have a bunch of young players. What they don't have, which is what Seattle's roster is filled in, is that mid-level veteran. And I think this is part of where the NFL owners have gotten cheap. That's why Eric Kendricks, who clearly is better than most of the linebackers we see playing on Sunday, is practice squad and getting, 3 games at the end of the year because they don't want to pay him for the whole year. They would rather pay Garrett Wallow, for example, and make him RB or LB5 and make him run on special teams. And it's, $1.5 million cheaper over the course of the season than having to roster and pay Eric Kendricks just because of the veteran versus young player's salary. But they are missing that kind of second contract veteran that's not a star, that's not a young player, that's just a good starter. Seattle's filled with it, like the Julian Loves of the world. The Niners, when they made it to the Super Bowl in 2019 and stuff, that's what they had. It wasn't just they had Bosa, right? Because they've had Bosa in other years. They had Jimmy Ward, who's kind of that, he's a highly paid veteran starter who does his job at a high level. He's not a star, though I always thought he was closer to a star, but he's not. That's how he's viewed. Eric Armstead was paid like a star. I should take that back. But those were the kinds of guys that I think their roster is missing. And that's where I say bring back Jauan Jennings. Now, if they have more guys like that, then I wouldn't say bring him back, but I don't think they do. And I think they need him for the culture, Rob. I'm a culture guy. Come on.
No, I think you've got to get rid of him. In fact, I want all like Lenore after the game saying, oh, well, if we weren't hurt, it would be a landslide. Like he's still part of the uncrowned champion 49ers. They got to get rid of all of that. That was why part of this year
you don't want him back, right? You don't want Lenore back. Right?
No, I don't want Lenore. He's going to be back, but I wish he wasn't. Like that guy's a captain, Mr. Oh, well, we would have been a landslide. After you get your clock cleaned, you're talking about how you would have won by so much. Like, no, dude, you're not the role model. Like, I don't want the young players to act like Diamador Lenore. I don't want CJ West to act like that or Alfred Collins to act like that. No, man. They got to get rid of the uncrowned champion 49ers. They have to.
Yeah, I also thought him and Jackson Smith and Jigba, like, dude, they were down by whatever. Why are you going and smacking him?
headbutting people. No,
Yeah.
I don't want that. Mike UA says 1+ this offseason. I don't think there's anyone up for a contract we can't let walk. Less distraction, and I gave up a cheeseburger for this super chat. Well, first of all, thank you, Mike.
Sorry, man. It's a
I
meal.
agree. I don't think there's anybody that they have to bring back that's a free agent this year.
Well,
I don't.
I guess I just said I would like them to bring back Jauan Jennings.
I mean,
but
we're
again,
sitting here
but
talking about you need speed, and you're like, oh, bring back Jauan Jennings. He didn't have.
I think they need to add speed too, but I think they're at a point where they can't keep affording to let their somewhat like mid-tier veteran players walk and think we can replace them and not replacing them. Because I think what's happened with this roster is, in theory, we'll pay our top guys and we'll keep replenishing our Jimmy Wards or Jauan Jennings. I should stop doing that to Jimmy Ward, or Jauan Jennings of the world with draft talent, right? And they've done such a horrible job at premium positions being able to like replenish that draft talent that, I mean, look at their picks right now. Renardo Green as a second round pick we thought would be a starting corner. It's a total question mark. Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown were third round picks to be starting safeties. Total question marks, whether you can even have either of them as starters. Okay, they paid Lenore. He's on a second contract. Let's forget him. You go down the list, there's so many players who were drafted with the idea that they would replace people and be looked at as starters, and we don't look at them like that right now. They can't afford to just let another guy that they know is a starter walk, and they have the money for it now. That's the other thing. I say, Jed York, this offseason, I want to see you cut that check.
He's not gonna. But the answer to that, Vish, to me is not, well, spend more on Jauan Jennings. The answer to that is get better at drafting. You have to build your team through the draft. It's the entire structure of the sport. It's your cheap labor. You have to get better at the draft. It's not, well, we got to spend for Jauan Jennings. Like, that's not the answer.
Yeah, but you know what the issue with that is? When you want to be a good drafting team, you don't get 10 draft picks, but 4 of them are compensatory, right? Like, you are able to navigate and hold that draft board. It doesn't mean that you come away with 12 great players, but you're able to move up and down when you need to. The Niners are great at giving assets to move up, and then they usually just pick where they are. And that's why every year, well, they have 6 picks in the draft. And then you add 3 more with compensatory picks. But it's like those compensatory picks aren't the biggest trade value assets for you to then be able to move up and down the board and be able to navigate. And then, okay, this year we don't love this draft. Let's shift out of our picks and be able to get 10 picks then for the next year when the draft is deeper. So then we could go up and down draft. And that's something they don't do well as a team at all, navigating the draft board and being able to go up and down in that sort of way too. And so that's where it's like, well, they kind of just sit there and pick where they are. So they're going to pick another 6 players, probably, right? They have 6 picks next year as of right now. And they're just going to pick 6 players where they're at. And you're going to be like, yup. I think philosophically, that's where we're getting stuck. And that's where we're looking at these drafts. And a lot of people look at, oh, they got a guard. Well, when you got to start replacing some of your better players, a guard isn't making that much of an impact. And that guard people said they got, it's kind of questionable now. After a year or two, he had a rough year or two.
I think it's pretty good. I think he was hurt for most of the year. I don't think you got to worry about Dominic on the list of things that need fixing. Right?
No,
guard.
But I don't think he's. I think people after year 1 were like, we got Dominic Pooney as if like they got the next Zach Martin. They have an okay starter at right guard. That's what they have.
San Diego 49er says, what was the stats of GM's first round picks on Saturday? Ricky Pearsall had no stats on Saturday. He was playing on one leg and he did nothing, unfortunately.
Well,
all right.
Their 7th round pick is saving their bacon. So
yeah, thank God for Jauan Jennings. Whew, man.
Exactly. That's who I meant. You got me.
Never replace Jauan Jennings. It's impossible. Just like Kyle Juszczyk, you could never replace him. We got to sign him.
Hey, it's a culture thing. Guess what? I'm for bringing. You know what? I'm gonna shock you with this. Maybe I'm just having a bizarro show. Maybe I'll come back out of mourning, a little more well-rested, and take all of these opinions back. I say bring him back another year. Coach's buddy. I thought Coach's buddy, all is said and done, had maybe his best year in 2 or 3 years. I thought Coach's buddy actually was really good this year.
He's under contract, so he's coming back.
Oh, right, because, they cut him to get – I forgot. Okay, Coach. Okay, thank God. Thank God. Well, coach's buddy, if it was the case, I would want you to come back. And it's not just because you're like Trent Taylor, which is friends of the players.
They've already decided that he's coming back, so that's already built in. I know you got to run, Vish.
Well, it threw off their vacation last year, Rob. So
and now Kittle's going to be hurt and rehabbing. Although there's good news on that front too, which I can get to. But I know if you got to run, you got to run. I totally understand it. I'm going to keep on soldiering on here without you. But thank you, Vish.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Have a good one. Great show as always. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
See ya. All right. There's a couple other things I want to get to because we heard from George Kittle and we heard from Mac Jones, which impacts the draft conversation. I'll get to that in 1 minute. But first, want to give a shout out to Sleeper. Oh, I forgot to get my phone hooked up. All right. I'll do that so you can see the pics and see the app because it's actually really cool. But Sleeper's been a sponsor of the show all season long. We are very, very grateful to have them on board. We've made all of our picks this year with Sleeper, and we think that you should too. The app is super easy to use. I'm going to get it up on the screen in 1 second for you. They have everything you could possibly want. They have news. There it is. As you can see, the Dolphins will be hiring Jeff Hafley as their head coach. The Lions are going to hire Drew Petzik, former Cardinals OC, to be their offensive coordinator. That's fascinating. They have fantasy games you can play, all the different sports. And, of course, they have the picks as well, college football, basketball, baseball, all the sports, including NFL. We give you our picks on Fridays, which we're going to continue to do. Go download it. Check it out. If you sign up, you'll get a free $20 entry. You can have some fun. And if you want to deposit some money, use our code when you do. Our code is GSP. Use that. You'll get a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit. So you might, if you're going to deposit money, you might as well use the code and then you get a little extra money. And who doesn't love extra money? Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Now, let's get to a couple other things from the clearing out of the lockers that I wanted to get to. We were talking about draft picks, right? And what the 49ers have and how they could use them. Well, if they trade a certain backup quarterback, they could get more draft picks. And I thought Mac Jones' comments today were very interesting as he cleaned out his locker. Take a listen.
This year is just awesome for me to be around these guys and the coaches, players, everybody. It was just so fun to get, as I say, the train back on the tracks, and that's what I wanted to do. So put a lot of good film out there. In a way, I had 2 seasons in one. I had a season as a starter, kind of, and a season as a backup. So it was really good for me. Had a lot of fun and excited for what's next. And I don't know, like you said, I'm on a 2-year deal, but I do believe I'm a starter in this league, and I'm excited for continue to get better this offseason and see what happens.
Okay. No. Oh, sorry. Wrong button. Does that sound to you like a guy that's ready to just sit and be a backup quarterback for all of next season? Doesn't sound like that to me. Doesn't sound like that's what he's expecting. For him to say, yeah, I got the train back on the tracks and he believes he's a starting quarterback is him saying, I want to be a starter somewhere. I proved I can still do it. I rehabbed my career. I want to be the next star in the Kyle Shanahan rehabilitation clinic. I think that Mac Jones expects to be traded, and I think he should be traded. If you can get a second-round pick for Mac Jones, you absolutely do it. Hey, DeMeco Ryans, guess what? If you had Mac Jones, you'd still be in the playoffs right now. You'd be competing for a Super Bowl because Mac Jones wouldn't have been a disaster that C.J. Stroud was for you. How about a second-round pick for Mac Jones, DeMeco, or Kevin, or in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell? Guess what? You need a quarterback? Here's a second-round pick for Mac Jones. I think the 49ers need to maximize as many draft picks as they can get. You have Brock Purdy. I know you need a good backup quarterback, but guess what? You've got other more pressing needs. Sorry, you're going to have to risk it a little bit at quarterback. You're going to have to put faith in your $50 million a year quarterback and Brock Purdy to start every game for you next year because you have too many holes to fill this offseason. And you can get a really good pick for Mac Jones. Maybe you get a second-round pick, and you know what? Maybe you take that pick and you trade down and you get more picks in the later rounds, or you package that pick with another player or something like that, and you move up the draft board. But there is value in it to just have that potential asset in Mac Jones and just have it sit on your bench and do nothing just because of the fear that Brock Purdy might get hurt. I think that's the wrong way to go. If it's Curtis Rourke, great. Curtis Rourke could be your backup quarterback, whatever. And I get that it's a risk. I understand all that. I get all of that, but it's a risk the 49ers have to take. You get a good offer for Mac Jones, move him. Don't be scared. You have to, there's some risk involved in everything. There's also a risk in not trading Mac Jones and keeping him and not getting an extra draft pick or an extra player if you were to trade him for a player, whatever it is. There's risk that way too. People don't look at it that way, but that's the reality. You are either trading him or you're not trading him. Both have risks associated with it. The question you have to ask yourself is, which risk are you more comfortable taking? Fortunately, I think the 49ers are more comfortable taking the risk of keeping Mac Jones, but he sure as hell didn't sound like a guy in that clip that expects to be around for another year. Maybe that was my interpretation. How did you guys interpret it? Let me know. But I think he expects to be traded. And I know that Tim Kawakami and others have said, or I shouldn't say others, because Tim is the only guy I've heard say this. He has openly speculated about whether the Niners had sort of a wink, nod, handshake agreement with Mac that, yeah, it's a 2-year deal, but if you're good, we'll trade you. So we'll see. Obviously, there's a lot of time to play out. We've got the new league year hasn't even started. Obviously, we're still in the playoffs, so it'll play out. But I think those conversations are probably being had along some back channels and stuff like that. And if the Niners have a chance to do it, they should do it. Because, again, you have holes you need to fill. We talked about it. You need playmakers. You need multiple wide receivers. You need defensive linemen. You need help in the secondary. And you need help at tight end. George Kittle is older. He's coming off the Achilles. You don't have that much behind him. Tondres is a nice player, but I don't know if he can be your full-time starter. And if he is, you're going to need backup depth behind him. George Kittle also spoke at his locker today, and the update on the Achilles was pretty good. Take a listen to George.
I'm fantastic. Surgery went really, really good. Surgeon was incredibly happy with it. Little background into it. He said best case scenario when you tear an Achilles is that you tear it up high by your soleus, which is what I did. I had a clean tear. They didn't have to drill into my heel. And where the repair was is where there's more blood flow. And so it takes some time off of the recovery time. So he's very excited about everything, my recovery, when I'll be running, when I'll be ready to play again. He's very excited about it. So that puts me in a really good mood. It's not as bad as other ones. So just excited about that.
Is there a timeline on that? And when do you think you might be practicing?
I'll keep it as a surprise. You guys can find out later.
So that's George Kittle talking about the Achilles. So that's all good news. Higher up, more blood flow, shorter recovery time. That's all great. But as I have said many times, when you are building a football team, it is hope for the best, plan for the worst. Niners have to begin to plan for life after George Kittle right now, and you have to begin to plan for life after Christian McCaffrey right now. So that's all goes into the stew when you're talking about draft needs and who they should trade and who they shouldn't trade. That's why I say if you get a good pick for Mac Jones, you have to take it. And I know there's a lot of people in the chat. Well, if the Broncos had a good backup, they wouldn't be cooked right now. You know what? That's a risk. I get it. And we don't know what Jared Stidham's going to do. Maybe he's going to be good. But Tom Moore, the old coach of the Colts, the offensive coordinator for the Colts, used to say, we don't have a good backup quarterback because if our starting quarterback gets hurt, we're effed. I think that for this team to get where they want to go, they need reinforcements on the roster. They need it. You can't afford to just simply keep an asset like Mac Jones and not do anything with him. If everything goes to plan and goes the way you want it to go for the 49ers, Mac Jones never sees the field. There's too many needs on this team. They don't have the luxury of just keeping Mac Jones. They don't. Warlock says, why not do a liquidation sale and get draft picks, build a team through the draft for 5 years and be contenders? We're not close to winning the Super Bowl. I wouldn't trade off everybody, but I would trade a guy that, if everything goes perfectly, is a backup quarterback. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. You need reinforcements on this team. If the Niners roster was in a little bit of a better place, I would be more than happy to hang on to Mac Jones, but it's not. That's just the simple reality of the situation. So I would get rid of Mac Jones. You're going to need, like I said, all the other needs, but that was good news with George Kittle. Now, later on, at some point, he did say that he was, kind of circling, sort of ballparking around November for a return. That would be incredible. If you could get George Kittle back around November, that would be fantastic. I would absolutely sign for that. I'm not expecting that, but, we'll see. Sometimes guys come back sooner than advertised, and we'll see just how good George is when he actually does come back. The guy that did his surgery is Dr. Neil Elatrosh. That's the same guy that did Nick Bosa's ACL the first time. I don't know if he did it this time. He's also the guy that did Jimmy Garoppolo's ACL, by the way. The Niners have gone to him a lot. So Who knows? We will see. Couple other things that came out of the media session I wanted to talk about. Brock Purdy says he does not need surgery on his toe. He will not have surgery on the toe. He said he's going to rest it. He's still going to rehab it and try to strengthen it, but he said the toe is good. Considering he just ran for 400 yards behind the line of scrimmage, obviously the toes must be doing pretty well because Brock was pretty damn mobile out there. Also, Fred Warner said he is going to slow down his ankle rehab. Obviously, he was, super trying to accelerate everything because he was trying to get back next week to play. Obviously, he doesn't have to do that. So he's going to kind of slow it down and do kind of a more deliberate process. That makes sense, but he's obviously in a very good place, and he's going to be able to spend just about all of the offseason kind of having a regular offseason, which is phenomenal news for the 49ers because I think, when players make jumps and have good years, it's very rare that they have those coming off a year where they had to spend the whole offseason rehabbing. I know Nick Bosa did it the last time he tore his ACL. That is not normal. So the fact that Fred can have a pretty much normal offseason, that is awesome news for the 49ers, and hopefully he comes back stronger than ever. Of course, it sucks that the Niners are eliminated, but a silver lining to that is that Nick Bosa didn't, or that Fred Warner didn't have to take that injury risk. So that is awesome. That is good news. Speaking of injuries, Michael Williams said his ACL rehab has, not been great. Like he's working to get back, but he said Nick Bosa's been checking in. He said Nick Bosa's been a big brother, and Michael Williams said he hopes to be back around training camp, maybe before the start of training camp, maybe not. We'll see. That is frustrating to me because that was a guy that you wanted to have a normal offseason, right? Because he got playing time, he got experience in the NFL. Now he could go into year 2, knowing what to expect, knowing what he needed to work on in the offseason and all that stuff. Unfortunately, his offseason is going to be spent rehabbing, and that sucks because that means he's less likely. I'm not going to say he can't because that's not fair either, but he is less likely, I think, to make a massive second-year jump because of the ACL. That's what a major injury does. It slows down that progress in a lot of ways. And that's frustrating because, as we've talked about, Niners have needs on this defensive line. They need to get a lot better, and not just at the starters. They need to build up the depth there too. So that's going to be an obstacle for Michael Williams to come back in. I think that we don't know what he is as a player yet. I know a lot of people like to think that they do. I think there's a pretty good case to make that he could be, there's more there than people think. I think he can be more than just a run stopper. I would not say for sure that he's never going to be a good pass rusher. I think if he ends up being a very good run stopper and a solid pass rusher, that's a damn good player. And you'd be happy to have that player, and it's an important position. So his comeback will be one of the stories of the offseason and one of the things that'll be a big factor, I think, into the success of the defense in 2026, quite honestly. Mike UA says, what's up with the Jake Tonjes injury? I don't think it was crazy serious because he was jogging and running on the sidelines. I mean, I don't know what it was, but I think we would have heard if it was more serious, although news will sort of trickle out here as we go along. This guy's having off-season surgery. I'll be interested to see if Ricky Pearsall has off-season surgery or not, or if that's an injury that just requires rest. Pearsall has a lot of questions going into year 3. I will say this for Ricky. If you need surgery, get the surgery. If you don't need surgery, don't get the surgery. But here's what we can't have. We can't have next year when you go in, if you just get tackled on a regular tackle and you land on that knee, it can't be you're out for 6 weeks again. Just can't. So whatever you need to do to not have that be the case, do it. If that means surgery, do the surgery. If that just means rehab and rest, go that route. But get it figured out. Get it figured out because I think he has the potential to be a really good receiver in the league, and especially in this offense. I think he does. From the limited glimpses that we have seen, it's there to me on the field. I think that he's got a good skill set. Kyle knows how to use him. He's got potential, but he can't fulfill that potential if he's not out on the field, and he has to. I mean, he had 100-yard games in 2 of his first 3 weeks this year, including against that vaunted Seattle defense in week 1. 4 catches for 108 yards. It's in there. 11 catches for 117 against Arizona. 6 catches for 96 yards against Tennessee. 5 for 85 against the Bears when he was battling that knee. It's in there, but now it's on him because you got to find a way to get on the field and stay on the field. And that's just the reality of the situation. Anyway, that's the roundup of news from the 49ers locker room. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. If you're not watching this live, please hype it up. The hype is huge. It helps us get views. It helps YouTube recommend it. If you could do that, if everybody could hype this video, it would really, really help a lot. And just a reminder, we're not going anywhere. Oh, it's the off season. The Niners are out. Whatever. We're here. We're going to be here every single weekday, just like we always are. We're going to be doing live shows throughout the entire off season. We're going to be hyping up and pumping up our draft coverage. We'll be expanding it. We're giving you more prospect interviews, hopefully more breakdowns of players, more previews, all of that stuff. So it's a perfect time to hop on board. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, because we're going to have plenty of good stuff for you in the offseason and throughout the whole thing. By the way, we're less than 100 days to the NFL draft. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll talk tomorrow.